Welcome to Lakers Central, where I discuss the most famous basketball franchise on the planet with the biggest, brightest, and up and coming voices in sports and culture. Before I get into today's show, make sure you guys go to LakersCentral.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and sign up for our newsletter. There's a lot of really cool things happening behind the scenes at Lakers Central, a bunch of announcements that are going to be coming before the NBA season starts. So sign up for the newsletter. I'm going to be doing giveaways to those who are subscribed. What's going on, Phil, man? Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? I'm not too bad.
I'm good, man. So we finally got some Lakers news. We got some NBA news, right? The NBA officially released their schedule for the remainder of the season. And the Lakers have 8 games, 7 of which are nationally televised. No surprise there, right? So we've got the Lakers schedule, man. They're not taking it easy on us, are they? Starting right off with the Clippers. So what are your immediate thoughts of this schedule?
Um, I like it. I know that it's tough, but I think that it's going to be a very good barometer for the team about where they're really at and if they're, if they're ready for the playoffs or if they need to still make a couple of adjustments. The seeding isn't really in question because we would have to do very, very poorly in these games in order to lose our home court advantage. So I think just being able to go up against the toughest ones and do some scouting, measure yourself, I think it's a good schedule.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this schedule, I mean, the Lakers, we had that postponed game with the Clippers, so I figured that the league was going to want to get that back on the schedule. It's obviously a huge draw to have the Lakers and Clippers play. So, but you look at the schedule, start off with the Clippers, then the Raptors, who are a very good team. There are a lot of people out there that think the Raptors can take down the Bucks and come out the East. I didn't believe that halfway through the season, but the Raptors are for real. The Jazz, on the other hand, people thought would be a major contender this year, and they haven't been. And Bogdanovich, I believe he's out for the rest of the season with an injury. And so OKC, good team, up and coming, but they're not going to be a threat to the Lakers. The Rockets, on the other hand, the last time we saw them, they had just banished every center from their roster, and I think that no one is taller than like 6'5". That did give us a little bit of trouble. The Pacers, very good team. Nuggets, very good team. And then, well, the Kings, they haven't been good since 2002. So this is an interesting schedule. The Lakers only have to win 3 games, and they get the 1 seed in the West. So they're going to win 3 out of these 8 games. I mean, that's not in question. When you look at the schedule, is there anything that you think fans can learn from this, or that do you think that the Lakers themselves will learn about themselves going up against some of these teams?
The two that I have circled are the two that you really highlighted, which are the Clippers and the Rockets. All of these other teams, I really think we can handle pretty easily. The Rockets and the Clippers create different problems for the Lakers offensively, but seeing how they've been strategizing and how they're going to attack the Clippers and the Rockets coming after this 3 months where the coaches have had a lot of time to decide what they want to do for the postseason and how they want to defend these teams. So that'll be really interesting to see because those are, I think, the 2 other best teams in the West right now.
So this season, we didn't get to see Dion Waiters, and we both kind of want to see what he looks like on this roster. How much of him do you think we see over these last 8 games?
Probably a lot. In part because they'll be wanting to play him into game shape again, and in part because they want to see what they have. Dion Waiters is one of those guys who it can go very right or very wrong, and it's not likely to be anywhere in the middle. So the larger sample size they can get from Waiters and sort of see where he fits, the better. So I expect to see quite a lot of him.
When you look at these games, are there any that you think LeBron and Anthony Davis will sit out?
I think if they've got home court, I think the last 3 games are going to be optional for them. I think they'll want to show up for Houston to make that statement, but I wouldn't be surprised if they hung it up after that, especially if they are bringing in 2-way guys like Devontae Caycock or THT to get some floor time and some big league experience in what amounts to garbage time. So I would imagine after Houston, if they're still in a very good position to have home court advantage, I don't think we'll see them again until the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, LeBron, out of probably any other star in the NBA, he's ready for whatever is in front of him, whether it's missing a few months of the season, going into this bubble. I mean, LeBron has basically lived in a bubble since he was like 16. So I'm not worried about him. I'm not worried about anybody on the Lakers. I mean, for Anthony Davis, he's never been on a team this good. Certainly, he's never faced these circumstances. He's never played in a city like this. Now, he went to Kentucky, major college basketball scene, but even Kentucky isn't what the Lakers are and isn't what LA is. And so I wonder about him a little bit, but he's played so well under the bright lights this year. I, I probably have really no legit concerns. There's been a lot of talk about who the Lakers will pick up to replace Avery Bradley. I mean, at this point, I guess, do you think that it's going to be J.R. Smith?
It's hard to read Lord Pelinka before he acts. That's one of the nice things we were talking about that I think last time I was on, that he runs a pretty tight ship and you don't really know what he's doing until it's done. But I think he's keeping his options open. I don't think there's a rush. No one else is like lining up to sign J.R. Smith and steal him away from the Lakers. So I think he can afford to wait, which is what he's doing. That's probably the most likely outcome, just because it's someone who's familiar with LeBron already and who they know has had success in the finals before. But how much time he actually sees and how important his role is something else.
Yeah, I mean, even if there are other teams interested in him, I think he's waiting on the Lakers. Like I think he wants to be a Laker. This is his shot. Even if there's another team that would be looking at him for a legit title shot, you're really only talking about the Lakers, Clippers, and Bucks. As I mentioned, I think the Raptors are legit, but I can't see JR going there. Denver, I couldn't see them going after someone like JR. I mean, you really have to have a veteran solid roster, and the Lakers have that. So yeah, I don't think we're in jeopardy of anyone trying to steal him out from under us. So the NBA, they tested 302 players and 16 came back with positive coronavirus tests. For you math whizzes out there, that's 5.3% of their test. That some people had freaked out. Others, it didn't bother them as far as I'm concerned. I'm actually happy it was only 16. I thought it could be possibly more, but when you heard that number, what were your thoughts?
I was expecting more, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm glad that it is only 16, even though that is kind of a high number. It's still a much better percentage than the tests they're currently getting back in the greater Orlando area right now. Mm-hmm. So they have one up on the local authorities as it is.
Yeah, I mean, nationally, I think the United States is at like 9.3%. So, and obviously the rest of us aren't NBA players, so it's not like we can go get tested, in some cities. So I think if there were more tests, it would probably be way higher than 9%. For the fact that the NBA players are, only 16, I think that's a win. When you look at Orlando, I mean, it's a shit show down there right now with their coronavirus. They, I believe in Florida, they didn't close down bars, but they basically said you can't drink at bars, which basically is closing them down. Because people still aren't taking it seriously. Now, Adam Silver was asked about that, and he said he believes that their quarantine zone or their bubble will be the safest place down there. And I believe him. I think the NBA bubble will likely be one of the safest places in the United States. We still don't know what's going to happen with the Disney employees, but the way Orlando is trending, the way Florida is trending, I can't imagine. They're maybe behind the scenes they've worked that out and they just haven't announced it. But are you comfortable? So before the 16 tested positive, what were your thoughts on the bubble? Did you think it was legit? Did you think it was going to work? And now that 16 have tested positive and Florida is spiking again, do you have any reservations about them restarting the season?
Yeah, with respect to what Adam Silver had to say, the safest place in Florida right now isn't exactly a high bar to clear. So there is that to consider. But it's the general situation in Florida is worrisome. I don't know that there is anywhere else that would not be at least as worrisome in terms of the setup, because then you get into, are we in a metro area? Are there with other people? Do we have the facilities? A lot of other questions get opened up. I think the concept of the bubble is sound enough. Like they've already started doing tests more than 2 weeks before the show update, so everyone can do their quarantines and show up with a clean slate. They're doing that process correctly. The problem, though, as we've talked about, is the two things. First, the issue with the Disney employees, which I'm sure the players are not blind to. I think they'll have that fixed up beforehand, most likely. And also the line from Jurassic Park about life finding a way.
Dr. Malcolm.
They can set it up as ingeniously as they like, but we're not really going to know how it's going to work until we see it in action.
I agree. I don't look. I think it's as sound a plan as you're going to see from any of the major sports leagues. I don't think anybody else can pull this off but the NBA. They said they expected some players to test positive. That's what's happened. I have seen people say, well, if one of the major stars tested positive, that might derail things. Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say that. Like if LeBron tests positive, yeah, the NBA is going to take notice. And LeBron wields enough power that maybe, I don't know, they postpone something. But even then, I could see the other 22 teams finding issue with that, the other owners finding issue with that. So I don't know if that would even happen. If an entire team or majority of a team test positive, then there may be some issues. But I think at this point, the NBA is full steam ahead. They're talking about unique camera angles. Who knows what that's going to look like? But it's going to be an interesting time. This just came out today, and let me make sure I state this correctly. I don't know if you saw this, but it was from The Athletic, Sam Amick. And he said that the teams that are not participating in the bubble in Orlando, they're talking about doing some other kind of bubble, maybe in Vegas or somewhere else. Houston and Minnesota, they've raised their hands as potential options, although I can't see any player wanting to go to Minnesota. But what are your thoughts about the rest of the league who won't be participating in Orlando, starting up somewhere else and playing some games?
I can't be nice about this. This is a terrible idea. There is no way to get around it, because the whole question that we've been grappling with since the NBA said that it had intended to restart was, is it worth finishing the season and crowning a champion in this climate to bring that many people together and put them at risk? And the league decided that for the continuity of the league's sake and for the profitability of the league, they had to have a playoff to finish the season. And that's fine that we debated that. But if we sort of just barely managed to convince everyone to put together a playoff bubble, putting together like a consolation bubble so they can save the TV ratings when these players don't really have anything to play for except maybe a contract next year, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
So I'm looking at this and I see the Cavs, the Pistons, and the Hawks as the three teams that are kind of leading that charge. The Knicks, which may be very un-Knick-like, they're stepping back and saying, wait a minute, we've got a bunch of players that could be free agents next season. They have reservations. So I don't know how they pull this off, man. I mean, I hate to say this because it gets annoying sometimes, but it does feel kind of like a money grab for those other teams. Whether or not anyone would even tune in to see these other, I mean, look, these are the worst teams in NBA. They already don't get ratings. And so I get it that people are starving for sports. And so the theory is, I mean, you could roll out anybody and America is going to pay attention. Maybe that's true given the current environment that we're in. But are you tuning in to watch the Cavs? I mean,
maybe if I was bored enough, but probably not. and regardless, it's very like that. I think you're absolutely right about the logic behind it is just let's make up a little bit more of this money. But I imagine the players are going to have a lot to say about that because it's a very casual attitude toward their health, and it's very obviously risking it for no purpose aside from making a buck, which I think a lot of them are going to have objections to.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Tim Fertitta, he had raised his hand some time ago before they settled on Orlando. Vegas has always been in the running, but their mayor went on Anderson Cooper and made a fool of herself, and then. Like I said before, Minnesota, I just can't see it. I don't know where they would even do this at. I mean, Disneyland or Disney World is so so perfect. I guess you could make an argument to do it in California at Disneyland, maybe. But I don't know. I don't know where you would even pull this off at. And at this point, given that it really is the bottom feeders of the NBA, I don't know what you do with that. I mean, and if they do restart these other teams, I'm still unclear about what the draft order and stuff is going to look like. I mean, have you heard anything about how the Orlando bubble and or any other bubble the league puts together impacts the draft?
I've seen proposed dates. I don't remember exactly what they are. I've seen proposed dates for the lottery and the draft itself, but in terms of, the lottery process, what the odds are going to be like, where the draft is even going to be held, if anybody's going to be there, I don't think they've determined any of that yet.
Yeah, it just seems like we've got the 22 teams, run with them. If individual teams, can get clearance from the CDC in their cities or whatever to host, training camps, so be it. Maybe two teams team up to do it together. That maybe is within close proximity of each other. Maybe that's a situation, but I just don't see the logic behind starting up any other games for the rest of the season. And I don't even know how those games would really apply to the regular season. Are they going to count as wins and losses? I mean, it just sounds like more than the league needs to bite off right now. And they need to just focus on Orlando and then still continue to focus on next season, because we know next season is going to be heavily impacted by all of this.
Yeah, they have more than enough to be doing right now, right? The league does, and I think it would be just an unnecessary additional distraction, especially when, if they take their eye off the ball a little bit and start working on this sideshow, and then something goes wrong in the preparations in Orlando, that's going to be a big problem for the league's credibility with the fans and the players in terms of how committed they are to doing this safely.
Yeah, I agree. Now, let me ask you this, Phil. Avery Bradley, he's not playing. He's opted out. Trevor Ariza, he won't be playing. Lou Williams is flirting with the idea, at least on Twitter. He's flirted with the idea. Are you surprised we haven't heard more players opt out? And do you think by the time the season does roll around, more players will have opted out?
Yes, I am surprised that more players haven't. I think that there may be a little bit of a sort of peer pressure dynamic going on, in the sense that no one wants to be the first superstar or like the biggest name to say they're not going, because we all saw what happened to Kyrie Irving when what he did was hold a phone call. And not even, by all accounts, contribute all that much to the substance of the conversation. He just had a phone call,
right?
And look what happened to him. So I don't think anybody really wants to bring that on themselves. Damian Lillard took a lot of crap online when he was questioning whether or not he would want to come back and play. So I think after that, a lot of the stars were like, if the Players Association wants to do it, if the league wants to do it, it's not really worth the heat to say no.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that there's a level of peer pressure. Kudos to Avery Bradley and Trevor Ariza, guys who made decisions for them and their families. I've long said it's a personal decision, whether you play or not. I'm all for whatever that individual player decides to do. It has nothing to do with me. I don't know if any superstar would opt out, right? Like, I mean, maybe can you see any superstar saying, hold on, I'm not going? Like, can you see that at all?
I don't think so. And I think that for the exact reasons we're saying, because there would be some, blog writer or local press guy trying to make a name who would call that person a quitter and start this conversation. And I don't think that they want to deal with that.
Well, Phil, let's wrap up with this, man. Do you think the NBA is pulling strings behind the scenes to get Zion and LeBron matched up in the first round of the playoffs?
They were certainly very kind to New Orleans in the rescheduling, I will say that. Now, we knew beforehand also that Memphis was going to have a rough schedule at the end of the year relative to New Orleans and Sacramento and some of these other teams that are trying to get that spot. So that was always going to be that way. But now that it's mostly, playoff teams that they're playing, or playoff caliber teams, it seems a little bit unkind. Toronto got the same treatment, by the way, which is going to be a really interesting thing, because I think if Boston sneaks into that 2 seed, home court advantage in that second round matchup could be really important.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of talk about, the whole Zion thing, and the NBA is a business. You know, I mean, Ja Morant, I think he's the clear-cut rookie of the year. I don't care what Zion did in a few games of play. I don't care what he does in the bubble. He could go out there and put up 100 points like Wilt. He's not rookie of the year. I mean, it's just like,
Well, if he did that, he might get my vote. To be fair, if he puts up 100, we can have a talk about that.
I mean, it's hard to throw what Ja did to the side, right? I mean, Ja's been amazing, and so I think people are just so fascinated with Zion for obvious reasons that I think they're looking for a reason to maybe sneak him into the rookie of the year race, and it'll be a fascinating game or series if the Pelicans match up with the Lakers. I mean, look, Zion, LeBron aside, you've got all these ex-Laker players that were supposed to be our future all of a sudden on another team, and Brandon Ingram, you know, he looks amazing. I mean, that kid looks like he's going to be a stud. And the Pelicans have some questions to answer if they're going to give him a max extension, whatever these new extensions look like, because all this money the NBA is losing. So, you know, if you look at Lonzo, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, these guys that we thought were our cornerstone, all eyes would be on that. But I also think that if we played the Grizzlies, I think people are going to tune in. I think people are going to tune in. The Lakers could play the Globetrotters, and people are going to tune in. I don't think the NBA needs Zion, but I do understand why they would want to showcase him, especially in this environment.
And he is, you know, if he stays healthy, he's one of the futures of the league. There's really no doubt about that. He's got an incredible combination of talent and skill and intelligence. So if he stays healthy, he's going to be amazing. It's not really astonishing they want to get him on screen, but people are going to learn about Ja Morant if they don't know already. Because that young man can play basketball. He's going to be really special.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like Ja a lot. He's going to be a problem, I think, for the NBA for a decade or so. Everybody talks about Luka for good reason. They talk about Zion, but Ja Morant, I mean, he's right there, man. I love him. I think he's going to be a stud. I said I was going to get you out of here on that, but one more question for you, Phil. One more. Clutch Sports, man. Clutch Sports. They
the
continue.
Empire.
Man.
Defeated, man.
They continue to collect superstars. They just picked up Trae Young, a young superstar who himself might have a 10 to 15-year career. What do you make of that, man? I mean,
power moves, man. The legacy and the vision that LeBron and his team have in terms of wielding their influence and really taking control of the game away from these gatekeepers has been amazing to watch. And it looks like they're just getting started. They're getting their toes into other sports now.
Yes.
Rich Paul is going for global domination, and it looks like he's going to get there.
If there was any worry about what Clutch Sports would be when LeBron retired, they're going to be just fine. I think they're going to be scary for a lot of teams who are accustomed to doing business a certain way. Like Clutch Sports is empowering athletes and collecting talent in a way that I don't know if I've ever seen before. And immediately when that news was released, you know, you saw Trae Young with Photoshop Laker jerseys on him and all that stuff. And I have no idea if there's any connection to the Lakers. Frankly, I don't think that there is. I think that Laker fans are overreaching, overreacting. It's fun and games and all that, but Trae Young didn't sign with Clutch Sports to maneuver his way to the Lakers. Like, you know, that I don't. If he becomes a Laker, I'll get a Trae Young jersey. But I'm not. I think his reasoning for going with Rich Paul at this particular moment has nothing to do with the Lakers.
No, and to be perfectly honest, this isn't, you know, in my experience, but I can see it that there are a lot of young black athletes who are seeing this agency that is run by powerful black men, and they want to be a part of that project and they want to grow it, and the movement's still going. It seems like it's not going to stop anytime soon.
I don't think so, man. I don't think so at all. Well, Phil, always a pleasure to get you on. I asked you last time you were on, what are you working on? What are you working on, man? I know it's something.
Since we've been talking about them, I'm going to plug that whole series that I've been doing on potential playoff matchups. I'm working my way through the first round now. We got Memphis and New Orleans done. Portland's coming soon, and Sacramento thereafter.
Check out Phil's series. I know he's got a video or two coming down the pipe as well. He does good work for LakersCentral.com as well as LakersUK. Give him a follow also on Twitter. Follow me as well. My personal account is Lakers Central CEO. I appreciate all the support that you guys give to myself and the writers like Phil that's on the team. There's a lot coming. I can't wait for this NBA season to start. I think things are going to be crazy on Twitter when the season officially starts. And so that's good for people like me and Phil who are in the business of trying to get articles out and content for you guys. So we'll close out on that note, folks. Until next time, I'm out.